Elon Musk uncovers the next scandal of the US central bank, and Bitcoin will skyrocket because of this. Today, we will look at why. Because Elon Musk is very upset about this. He shares a document here about the Federal Reserve, where it becomes very clear that they are no longer doing their job, but are now focusing on side issues like DY, meaning some gender stories, equality stories, and so on, but are failing at their main job. This is also what Donald Trump always criticizes. Here, Jerome Powell needs to lower the interest rates. He needs to do his job. He is not doing his job properly. Let's take a look at this, because it is now highly explosive. And I think it should be obvious why all of this is bullish for Bitcoin, because either the Federal Reserve will be pushed to print money here. This will, in the long run, pump Bitcoin upwards. Or it will lead to questioning institutions like the central bank and so on, more and more. And this will bring more people to Bitcoin, because more and more people understand that the whole thing is a clown show, and this is now being confirmed right here, in what is being uncovered in the masks. He shares a tweet here and simply said it was true, and you can already see here. The whole thing already has nearly 18 million impressions. And when you see the video, it probably already has many more impressions and is currently going massively viral. In the post that was retweeted, it says the UI, in the Fed, meaning in the Federal Reserve, with an action plan to promote equality and all that stuff. There's even a video of Jerome Powell endorsing the UI. It's time to abolish the Federal Reserve. And Elon Musk confirms the whole thing and says, yes, just wow, what's happening here is just insane. And a document from the Federal Reserve was shared here. Or this is an excerpt, probably from the homepage here. And indeed, I had it translated into German here. You can also see why Elon Musk is so upset about this. Because it says here, quote, "The Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System is committed to promoting an inclusive and diverse workforce." So, it's no longer just about ensuring price stability at the Federal Reserve, meaning keeping inflation and such under control, making sure prices at the supermarket are affordable and that there is full employment. But now it's also about DIY. I made a video about it yesterday, that here in the EU, or rather at the ECB, Christine Lagarde has now announced her new agenda. Suddenly, it's no longer just about price stability, but also about pushing the digital euro forward. Suddenly, it's about advancing the economic compass and bringing the savings and investment union forward. And at the Fed, it's now about DIY stories. And Donald Trump has always sharply criticized this. And I believe, didn't he even close the DIY ministry or something along those lines? In any case, the document further states, we believe that the best ideas, decision-making processes, and ultimately service to the public emerge from diverse perspectives. We continue to work towards diversity and inclusion and are committed to this mission and our values. And the scandal here is why many people are upset, because performance is no longer the main focus, but rather it's about meeting certain quotas. And the Federal Reserve already has way too many employees. We'll also take a look at a statement from Vivek Ramaswamy shortly. Instead of making a clean sweep and laying off half the staff, they're now focusing on some DIY stories, even though there are entirely different problems to address. By the way, for those who don't understand what DIY means here, it stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So, diversity, equality, and inclusion. These are programs or strategies aimed at promoting equal opportunities and diversity within organizations. And at first, that sounds quite good and quite noble, but you always have to consider what kind of institution it is. And if you can't even manage to fulfill your main mandate, if you can't even ensure good monetary policy, then you can't start focusing on any side mandates. It's the same with the ECB, which somehow takes on the climate, trying to combat climate change, and who knows what else. And that's the perversity in which we sometimes live. Someone also writes in the comments below that DIY is wrong because in some cases it prevents the most qualified individuals from being hired for a position. This is because quotas have to be met. People should not be selected for a position based on their race or gender. The selection should be based on their qualifications. And that's what we're increasingly seeing, that we're no longer looking at qualifications, but eventually, I don't know, we end up with people at the Fed or employed in the Fed who are just there to fulfill some quotas. And it's not just in the Fed, it's like that everywhere. It's spreading like a virus. But hey, let's take a look at a statement about it. From Vivek Ramaswamy, who is also a big Bitcoin supporter and opposes CBDCs. He has a very interesting assessment on this. And he also calls for the abolition of the Federal Reserve. So, we now have Elon Musk, we have Vivek Ramaswamy, we have Ron Paul, we have so many people who are already calling for the abolition of the Federal Reserve. And Donald Trump is calling for an audit of the Fed and the dismissal of Jerome Powell. So, what's currently brewing here is really massive. And that plays totally into Bitcoin's hands if they tear apart the fiat system among themselves. I mean, nothing better could happen to Bitcoin.
What we really need out of the Federal Reserve is one objective: restore dollar stability, period. That's it. And the reason that investors around the world listen to the Fed, they get a false ego about themselves. The reason investors listen isn't because they have some unique wisdom. They don't.
So he also says they should focus here on the core task and not open up any side projects. He even goes so far as to say that one should focus only on price stability, not on full employment, because that's also the mandate here at the Federal Reserve. They have two jobs. One is price stability, the other is full employment. At the ECB, it's only price stability. And he also says, hey, the Federal Reserve might act like it. They don't have any wisdom or anything like that. Because everyone always looks to Jerome Powell, asking if he's going to lower the interest rates or raise them. Has he eaten wisdom with a spoon? No. Vivek Ramaswamy just says it. Like it is. The guy has no plan. Or well, he does have a bit of a plan, but not so much that he could play God here, and knows exactly how to steer an economy. I mean, you have to consider this. The entire stock markets, all the economic connections and so on, they all depend on a central bank. Now Jerome Powell has said that the Fed put will no longer be applied. A few days ago, he said that they won't step in if necessary. What happens? All the markets start selling off. It can't be that one person controls everything here. Influences everything. And that's why Bitcoin is all the more important. Because here there is no central bank, no FOMC meeting, no Fed committee, no Jerome Powell. Instead, there is only a decentralized computer code that everyone can verify, which is open source, which establishes Bitcoin's monetary policy indefinitely. I don't know until the end of time. I mean, until 2041 there will be distributions, and then there will be no more distributions. But we know exactly. We can look 80 years into the future, and then I can tell you exactly every 10 minutes. 0.0012. I don't know how much Bitcoin is distributed. I'd have to look it up. I don't know it by heart.
It's because investors are just looking to see how they're possibly going to screw it up next. And that's the dirty little secret on Wall Street. And so I just think we have a lot of employees at the Federal Reserve who don't really need to be there. Dollar stability should be the sole goal. Simplify expectations for the market, and you'd actually do a lot less damage than this sort of voodooism that's emerged in the last 25 years. And I do think there's a chance to put it to an end.
The last part was the most important here, where he says he sees a chance that the whole thing will end, meaning that the Fed will end. And that would indeed be an absolute turning point. This is the intense time we are in. We see new systems emerging, like Bitcoin, and we see old systems falling apart. People realize, okay, this is an old system from the Federal Reserve. It doesn't really work anymore. So we need to implement new infrastructure, new payment methods here. And Bitcoin is the way forward here. He also talks about voodooism, what has happened here over the last 25 years. Not just the last 25 years, the last 100 years, ever since the Fed has existed, for over 100 years, since 1913, it's all been voodoo. And he also says half of the employees should be fired. That's also, wow, I don't know who said that. Someone said that, someone big, maybe I'll remember later, said that it's well known that you could easily fire the Fed workers here. Do you think it was Elon Musk? Because, exactly, yes, that was Elon Musk. Of course it was Elon Musk. Elon Musk said that. That you could fire half or most of the Fed employees here. Because they only mess things up anyway. I mean, they can't even do their job right here. And this is also what Vivek Ramaswamy says, that investors only look at the Fed to see how they will make the market collapse or sell off next time. Or just do a bad job here somehow.
Question is, what is your opinion on the Federal Reserve, and do you have any intentions of doing anything with them?
And the Fed. Oh, yeah. I don't know. I always wanted to say that, you know.
This isn't exactly a brand new clip, but you can see once again that the voices are getting louder. Here also from the Trump camp, and Elon Musk is very, very closely connected with Donald Trump. He made a post some time ago showing a monopoly board and saying this is how the Federal Reserve works. Like when the bank runs out of money, then he simply describes that it's not really possible because it has an unlimited supply, as the bank can print the money itself. Elon Musk also once talked about, I believe, the magic money computer, where it was born here in the USA, a factor that can create something out of nothing. So we have an institution here that not only buys assets but also, by decree, cannot go bankrupt. So anyone can go bankrupt, any company, any entrepreneur, any individual can make a bad bet, and so on. But that's not the case with the Federal Reserve, and you have to go work for your money. And Jerome Powell can just chill in his bunker. In the Federal Reserve troops, that's obviously massively unfair. By the way, write in the comments what you think of my new beard here. This is the new summer look. If you like it, give it a like. If not, then write in the comments if I should maybe change something about my look here. I've also received criticism from time to time, where people have tried to blackmail me. They said, yeah, if you keep making videos like this, living at the beach and up here and with a sand bath, and so on, then I'll unsubscribe from your channel. So you see, cancel culture keeps going. But of course, we continue to make bullish videos here, even if there are attempts at blackmail from some people. I don't know what's wrong with such people, why they have a problem with it, no idea. But we now have a second clip here from Fox TV, where Jerome Powell is also viewed very critically. Check it out. I found it very, very insightful.
James Fishback is the CEO of the investment firm Azoria, and James joins me now. First off, can Trump fire the Fed chair?
Well, if you ask the founders of this country, the question would be absolutely right. He can fire the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of Treasury. He should absolutely be allowed to fire the Fed chair if the Fed chair is not doing a good job. Stuart, here's the truth. Last year, Gallup did a survey, and they found that only 4% of Americans had a great deal of confidence in Jerome Powell to do the right thing for the economy. If this guy ran for office, he'd be thrown out overnight. The truth of the matter is that Jerome Powell has done an awful job. He was too late to respond to the rising prices in 2021 and 2022. We had 9% inflation. He bears the burden, and President Trump is right to call him out for it.
Well, that's intense. He's clearly saying Jerome Powell should be fired because Elizabeth Warren had already warned that it could lead to a crash. And he says here only 4% think. What Jerome Powell is doing is good. If you consider the Secretary of the Treasury, the Secretary of Defense, etc., if you can fire them, then you should also be able to fire the head of the Fed. Yeah, I'm not so sure about that. The independence is still something that might potentially offer protection, so that no one can dictate politically. I would just say we should close the entire Fed. Just end the Fed, then we won't have the whole discussion about whether to fire Jerome Powell or not, or whether it should be independent, or whatever. I mean, that is certainly a kind of protection. Yes, definitely some harsh words here.
Did Jerome Powell lower rates right before the election? Was that to help the Democrats? Was he political?
It looks like it was awfully political. And the truth of the matter is there weren't the economic fundamentals to support lowering rates right before the election. If there were, they wouldn't have changed their tune the second President Trump won and said, wait, never mind, we don't want to do that anymore. Remember, this is the same Federal Reserve that Jerome Powell's deputy, Bill Dudley of the New York Fed, said in 2019 that the Fed should consider the way its monetary policy could affect the election outcome in 2020. If that's what they're saying publicly, Stuart, imagine what they're contemplating behind the scenes. The president deserves to have people that represent his economic vision for the country. That's Scott Bessent, that's Howard Lutnick, and if Jerome Powell is going to obfuscate, is going to be recalcitrant and frustrate President Trump's agenda, he should be terminated.
So, he makes it very clear again. Jerome Powell's decisions were terrible. They were completely wrong. And the country or the USA should have someone at the Federal Reserve who is on the same page with Donald Trump and supports Donald Trump's agenda, and not blocking it here.
I understand your opinion. He should be terminated. He should be fired. But if you did that, what impact do you think it would have on the stock market? I mean, that would unsettle the market, wouldn't it?
I think it absolutely would. To tell you the truth, I'm an investor, so I think that the stock market would probably panic and overreact in the moment. But the founders of our country did not envision a world where Jerome Powell can screw up so badly as he has done over the past couple of years and still keep his job. If the president of the United States cannot hold executive officers accountable for doing a bad job, then Stuart, guess what? They're going to keep doing a bad job. And so Jerome Powell is not above reproach. He should be held accountable. And if the president of the United States wants to terminate him and put a more qualified person in that position, the Constitution says he has a right to do that.
USA wants to remove and put a more qualified person in that position and ensure that the individual is not only more qualified but also possesses the necessary skills and experience as outlined in the Constitution, which clearly states that he or she must be adequately prepared for the responsibilities of the role. Has the right to do so. It can't go on like this. And he also says it wouldn't lead to a market crash, as Elizabeth Warren claims, because it might mean uncertainty in the short term, but in the long term, it would mean that Donald Trump would appoint someone who would turn on the money printing press. How do you say devalue the dollar further and thus ensures that the stock markets go up and that Bitcoin rises? And that's why it's, of course, very, very relevant for Bitcoin. If you're ready because Holler Pump, I'll put a link below for you too. 21 Bitcoin, where you can buy Bitcoin easily, safely, and simply. Use the code Bitcoin here to get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. Highly recommended. Definitely check it out. See you. Peace out.